The night had been full of voices, laughter, and clinking glasses, but now the house was quiet. Emma stood in her living room, staring at the half-finished cake on the table and the empty cups scattered about. Her birthday had been a success, at least on the surface. Friends, neighbors, even a few of Daniel's classmates had stopped by. They brought flowers, cards, and polite conversation. Everyone had said the same kind things. You look wonderful. Emma, what a beautiful evening. You're so strong. But as the door closed behind the last guest, Emma's smile fell away. The silence of her home pressed in, the same silence that returned after every celebration. It was the silence of a house missing one voice, the voice of her late husband. For 6 years she had carried herself with strength, raising her son, keeping the house, making ends meet, and pushing forward. Yet nights like this reminded her how empty it all could feel. She set down the glass she had been holding, untouched most of the night, and looked toward the hallway. Daniel stood there, leaning against the doorframe, his arms crossed. He hadn't said much during the party, though she had noticed him watching her from across the room. He wasn't a boy anymore. At 22, he had grown into a man taller than his father had been, with the same sharp jaw and steady eyes. To everyone else, he was Emma's son. But to her, he was also the reminder of how time had passed, how she had poured all of herself into raising him, leaving little space for her own heart. Daniel didn't move right away. He just studied her, the way she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, the way her shoulders slumped the moment she thought no one was watching. He had seen this before, his mother hiding her sadness, only letting it show when the room was empty. He couldn't bear it anymore. Emma turned to clear the plates, but his voice stopped her. "Mom." The way he said it made her freeze. It wasn't casual, not the way he usually called to her. It carried weight, as though he had been holding something back all night. She glanced at him, her eyes tired but gentle. "Yes, Daniel?" He stepped forward, his tone softer now. I wanted to wait until everyone left. There's something I need to say to you." Her heart skipped. It wasn't unusual for Daniel to talk to her, but the seriousness in his expression unsettled her. She pulled out a chair and sat down slowly, folding her hands in her lap. The clock ticked on the wall, the only sound filling the space. Daniel walked closer and sat across from her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. For a long moment, he searched her face as if trying to find the right way to begin. Finally, he spoke. "I've watched you all night, smiling, laughing, making sure everyone else felt welcome. But I know you, Mom. I saw the look in your eyes when no one was paying attention." Emma swallowed. She wanted to protest, to tell him he was imagining things, but she couldn't. He was right. Daniel's voice grew steadier. "You've been alone for so long, and you never say it, but I see it. I see how quiet the house feels when it's just us. I see how you look at the chair at the dinner table that's always empty. I see how you put on a smile, but when the night ends, you just fade." Her chest tightened. No one ever spoke to her this way. Not her friends, not her neighbors, not even her sisters. Everyone assumed she had moved on, or that she didn't need more than what she had. But hearing Daniel's words, spoken with such raw honesty, made her feel both exposed and understood. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you don't need to worry about me. I've learned how to manage. I'm fine." But he shook his head, his eyes burning with conviction. "You're not fine, Mom. You don't have to be. You deserve more than just managing. You deserve to feel alive again." The words pierced her heart. For so long she had pushed those feelings away. She had convinced herself that her time for love was over, that her role now was only to be his mother. But in that moment, staring at her son's determined face, she realized he saw her differently, not just as his mother, but as a woman who had needs, desires, and dreams of her own. Emma turned her gaze toward the window, blinking away the sting of tears. She hated being vulnerable in front of him, but she couldn't deny the truth he had spoken. For years, she had gone through the motions: work, chores, meals, sleep, without ever allowing herself to imagine what life could be if she opened her heart again. Daniel leaned forward, his tone softening. "I didn't want to say this while people were here. But I couldn't let another night go by without telling you. I don't want you to hide behind that smile anymore. I don't want you to keep pretending you're okay when I can see you're not." Emma looked back at him, her lips parting, but no words came. She was torn between the instinct to protect him from her pain and the sudden relief of finally being seen. For the first time in years, someone was holding up a mirror to her loneliness. And that someone was her son. That the room grew heavy with silence. Emma felt her pulse quicken, her breath unsteady. She had no idea where this conversation was going, but she knew it was about to change something, maybe everything. She finally found her voice, though it shook as she spoke. "Why now, Daniel? Why tonight?" He held her gaze, his eyes unwavering. "Because tonight I saw it clearer than ever. You don't just miss Dad, you miss being loved. And I can't let you go on like this, Mom. I need you to know. You're not invisible." Emma's heart pounded. The walls she had built around herself trembled. And though she wanted to push his words away, a part of her wanted to cling to them, to believe them. She sat there in silence, staring at her son, feeling the weight of his truth press into her. The night was no longer just her birthday, had become the night when Daniel, her son, had dared to tell her something that no one else had ever had the courage to say. And deep inside, Emma knew this conversation was only the beginning. Emma sat at the table, her hands folded, her eyes lowered. The echo of Daniel's words from earlier still rang in her mind. "You deserve more than just managing. You deserve to feel alive again." No one had spoken to her that way since her husband's passing. Everyone around her had treated her carefully, like a fragile vase that shouldn't be touched too hard. But her son had cut through all of that. And his words had struck straight into her heart. Daniel leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his voice quiet but firm. "Mom, I need you to listen to me. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to make things harder for you. But I can't keep pretending I don't see how lonely you are." Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but for once she had no defense. All her practiced lines, "I'm fine, I'm strong, I've accepted my life," felt empty in the face of his determined gaze. She looked at him, and for the first time she didn't see her little boy. She saw a man, one who had grown through hardship. One who carried his father's strength, but also his own fire. Her voice finally broke the silence. "Daniel, I've survived this long by learning how to live with what I've lost. I can't afford to think about what I want anymore. If I do, the pain will come back." He shook his head. "The pain never left. You just buried it. And I don't want you to bury yourself with it." The words were sharp, almost too sharp, but they carried love in them. Emma pressed her hands together tightly as though she could hold her emotions inside. But tears slipped through anyway, trailing down her cheeks. She hated crying in front of him, but she couldn't stop. Daniel stood and walked slowly to her side, lowering himself so he could look at her directly. His voice softened. "Mom, I know you miss Dad. I miss him too. But I also know this: he would never want you to live the rest of your life in shadows. He would want you to laugh again, to feel again, to let yourself be more than just his memory." Emma's breath caught. She hadn't heard anyone mention her husband in that way in years. People avoided it, thinking it would hurt her more. But hearing Daniel speak of him with such tenderness made her heart ache and heal all at once. She wiped her eyes and whispered, "You're too young to understand." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I'm old enough to see the truth. I'm old enough to know what it means to want someone, to need someone. I may not have lived as long as you, but I know what love looks like. And I know when someone is starving for it." The air grew heavy. Emma turned away, standing quickly, needing distance. She walked to the window and stared out at the yard. The night was still, the streetlights casting long shadows across the grass. She pressed her hand to the cold glass, trying to steady her breathing. Behind her, Daniel remained quiet for a moment, watching her. Then he spoke, his tone trembling now, a mix of courage and fear. "I don't want you to feel invisible, Mom. I don't want you to think your best years are behind you. You're still here. You're still alive. And you're still beautiful." Her heart jolted at that last word. She turned slowly, her eyes wide. "Daniel, But he didn't flinch. He held her gaze, his own eyes burning with sincerity. "I mean it. You've carried so much, but none of it has taken away who you are. You're still a woman. You still have so much to give, so much to feel. And I can't just sit back and watch you let it all slip away." Emma's knees felt weak. She leaned against the window frame, her lips trembling. "You shouldn't say things like that," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm your mother." His voice dropped lower, raw with emotion. "And you're more than that. You're Emma, a woman who deserves to be loved again. And if no one else will remind you of that, then I will." The words hung in the air like a storm cloud about to break. Emma's chest rose and fell rapidly, her mind a swirl of fear, longing, and disbelief. She wanted to push his words away, to tell him he was wrong, but deep down, she knew he was only speaking the truth she had buried. She moved back to the sofa and sank down, her face in her hands. "I can't do this," she murmured. "It feels wrong. It feels impossible." Daniel sat beside her, not too close, giving her space, but letting his presence speak for itself. His tone softened again. "It only feels wrong because no one's ever told you it's okay to live again. You've been trapped in grief for so long you've forgotten that you're allowed to want more." Her hands shook. She lowered them slowly and looked at him. His face was calm but intense, his eyes never wavering. In them, she saw no judgment. No pity, only truth, and an affection so deep it startled her. For years, she had told herself she was past the age of longing. That desire belonged to the young, and her place was to fade quietly into the background. But here was her son refusing to let her disappear, refusing to let her live half a life. Emma whispered, "Why are you saying these things to me? Why tonight of all nights?" Daniel's answer was simple but carried weight. "Because tonight, watching you smile for everyone else, I realized you haven't truly smiled in years, and I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I couldn't keep watching you disappear piece by piece." Her eyes blurred with fresh tears. She wanted to be angry, to tell him he had crossed a line. But instead she felt something else rising inside her, a warmth she hadn't felt in so long it almost scared her. She turned her face away, unable to hold his gaze any longer. Her heart pounded, her body trembling with emotions she didn't know how to name. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "What are you doing to me, Daniel?" The question lingered in the air, unanswered, as silence filled the room once more. The clock ticked, the world outside remained still. And inside that small living room, everything had begun to shift. The living room had never felt so heavy. The tick of the clock seemed louder than ever, filling the silence Daniel's words had left behind. Emma sat on the sofa, her hands pressed tightly together, her mind racing in 100 directions. She could not believe this was happening, that her son had spoken to her like that he had looked at her not as a boy but as a man who saw her differently. Daniel remained across from her, his eyes fixed on her face. He wasn't nervous anymore. His voice earlier had carried both fear and courage. But now there was only certainty in the way he sat, shoulders straight, gaze steady. He wasn't going to take back what he had said. Emma leaned back against the cushions, exhaling slowly. "You don't know what you're asking me to feel," she said softly, trying to sound firm but failing. Her voice cracked, betraying her emotions. Daniel didn't flinch. He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees. "I'm not asking you to feel anything. I'm telling you that you already do. You've just been hiding it from yourself." Her heart pounded in her chest. The words cut too close to the truth. She had been hiding. She had locked away her desire to be loved, convincing herself that it was too late, that her life had been decided the day her husband died. And yet Daniel had seen right through her. Emma shook her head, trying to gather strength. "Daniel, this can't happen. People wouldn't understand. I don't understand it." His expression softened, but he didn't look away. "Forget people for a second. Forget what they would say. Just listen to yourself, Mom. What do you want?" The question hit her like a blow. What did she want? She had spent years avoiding that very thought. She wanted companionship, warmth arms to hold her at night. Someone who would whisper to her that she was still beautiful, still worthy, still alive. But to admit it now, especially to him, felt dangerous. Her lips trembled. "I want things I'm not allowed to want," she whispered. Daniel's voice dropped, gentle and persuasive. "Who told you you're not allowed?" "Who decided that?" "Not me." "Not Dad, you did. You locked yourself away. But you don't have to anymore." Emma pressed her hands against her lap to keep them from shaking. She felt trapped between fear and longing. Caught in a storm she hadn't asked for but could no longer escape. Daniel moved closer. Slowly, carefully, as if not to frighten her. He sat on the edge of the sofa, leaving a small space between them. She could feel his warmth, and it unsettled her. Her body tensed, but she didn't move away. "You think you're invisible," he said softly, "but I see you. Every day. Every detail. The way you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're nervous. The way your smile fades the moment you think no one's looking. The way your eyes still shine even when you're tired. You're not invisible to me, Mom. You never will be." Her chest ached. She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to run, but she also wanted to stay right there, listening to him. She hadn't felt this exposed in years, yet there was something intoxicating about it. Emma turned her head toward him, her voice barely a whisper. "You shouldn't be saying these things." Daniel's answer was immediate, quiet, but unwavering. "Then why does it feel like you've been waiting to hear them?" Her breath caught in her throat. He was right. As much as she wanted to deny it, as much as she wanted to push him away, she couldn't deny how her heart leaped hearing his words. She had been starving for this kind of attention, this kind of tenderness. And now it was here in the most unexpected form. The air between them grew tense, charged with something neither of them dared to name. Emma's hands trembled as she clasped them tighter, her knuckles white. She felt like she was teetering on the edge of something that could change her life forever. She stood abruptly, needing space, and walked toward the fireplace. She stared at the photographs on the mantel pictures of Daniel as a boy. Family portraits with her late husband, smiling moments frozen in time. She touched one frame gently, her eyes blurring. "I made promises," she whispered. To him, to myself. "I said I would stay true." Daniel rose and walked closer, though he stopped a step behind her, giving her air. His voice was steady. "You stayed true, Mom, for years. You honored him, you raised me, you carried everything on your shoulders. But at what cost? At the cost of your own heart. Do you think Dad would want that for you?" Her tears spilled over now. She shook her head, her body trembling. "You don't understand." "I do," Daniel said firmly. "I understand more than you think, because I've been watching you disappear, and I can't let it happen anymore." Emma turned to face him, her eyes full of conflict. He was so close now, close enough that she could see every detail of his face, the strength in his jaw, the honesty in his eyes, the quiet desperation beneath his calm exterior. He wasn't just her son anymore. He was a man, standing before her with a truth she couldn't ignore. Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence between them grew thicker, heavier. She could feel her heart beating in her throat. Each breath shallow and shaky. Daniel stepped closer, closing the space between them, but not touching her. His voice dropped low, almost a whisper. "You don't have to answer me now. I just need you to stop pretending. Stop hiding from what you feel." Emma's body froze, every nerve on edge. She could feel the warmth radiating from him, the intensity in his presence. She wanted to step back, but she couldn't. She wanted to deny everything, but she couldn't do that either. She finally managed to speak, her voice weak but honest. "Daniel, you're shaking my whole world." His eyes softened, filled with a mixture of tenderness and determination. "Then let it shake, Mom. Maybe it's time your world changed." The words hung in the air, impossible to ignore. Emma's chest rose and fell quickly, her mind spinning. She had no idea what would happen next, but she knew one thing for certain: nothing between them would ever be the same again. Emma stood by the window, her hand pressed against the cold glass as if it could steady her. The night outside was still, but inside her heart a storm was raging. She had carried her grief for so long, building walls around herself, convincing everyone, including herself, that she was fine. But tonight those walls were cracking, and the one breaking them down was the person she least expected. Daniel's footsteps were soft as he came closer. She felt him before she saw him, his warmth, his presence. The certainty that he wasn't going to let her retreat into silence anymore. He stopped just behind her, leaving a respectful space. But his voice reached her like a whisper meant only for her. "Mom," he said gently, his tone filled with raw emotion. "Don't shut me out now, please. I can't watch you disappear into the quiet again." Her throat tightened. She wanted to push him away, to tell him he was wrong, that nothing could change, but her body betrayed her. Her shoulders shook, her breath trembled, and tears slipped down her cheeks. She hadn't let anyone see her cry like this in years. Not since the funeral. Daniel stepped closer, still careful, still leaving her the choice. "You've already lost so much. Don't lose yourself too. You don't have to live like this anymore." Emma turned slowly, her eyes wet and her heart pounding. Their gazes locked, and for the first time in years she felt seen, truly seen. Not as a widow, not as a mother, but as a woman who was still alive, still yearning, still capable of being loved. Her lips trembled. "Daniel, what you've done tonight. It's changed everything." The words hung in the air like a secret that could never be taken back. The living room felt smaller, charged with an energy that left her weak in the knees. She gripped the edge of the window frame, trying to hold herself steady. Daniel's eyes softened, but his voice was firm. "Then let it change. Let yourself feel again. You don't have to decide anything right now. Just don't lock it away anymore. Don't lock yourself away." Emma closed her eyes, her mind racing. For so many years she had told herself her time was over, that love belonged to the past. But Daniel's words had shaken something deep inside her, something she thought had died with her husband. She was terrified, yet she couldn't deny the truth he had spoken. When she opened her eyes, Daniel was still there, waiting. Not pushing, not demanding, just waiting. That patience, that steady presence, was what undid her completely. She whispered, almost afraid to say it aloud, "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be me again." Daniel took a careful step closer, his voice warm, steady. "One day at a time. One moment at a time. You don't have to know how, you just have to let yourself try." Her tears spilled again. She reached for the chair beside her and sank into it, covering her face with her hands. "I've been so afraid," she admitted, her voice breaking. "Afraid of what people will think. Afraid of betraying his memory. Afraid of feeling something I might lose again." Daniel knelt down beside her, his tone almost pleading. "You haven't betrayed anyone. You honored his memory every day of your life. You raised me. You carried this house. You kept his love alive in your heart. But now it's time to honor yourself too." Emma's heart ached at the truth of it. She lowered her hand slowly, meeting his gaze. His face was so close. His eyes filled with tenderness she hadn't expected. She felt vulnerable, fragile, but also strangely alive in his presence. The silence between them stretched. It wasn't an empty silence, it was full. Heavy with all the things they hadn't said, all the emotions they had held back for too long. Finally, Emma found her voice, soft and trembling. "You don't realize what you've done to me tonight? I don't know if I'll ever be the same." Daniel's reply was simple, yet it carried all the weight in the world. "That's all I wanted, Mom, for you to never be the same again." Her chest rose sharply as she inhaled. She knew there was no turning back now. Something inside her had shifted, something she couldn't undo. She was terrified of what it meant, terrified of where it might lead. But she was also more awake than she had felt in years. Emma stood again, her legs unsteady, and moved back toward the window. She looked out into the darkness, searching for answers she knew wouldn't come. The only answer was behind Hertha Man, who had forced her to confront everything she had buried. She whispered into the glass, almost as if speaking to the night itself. I thought my story was finished. I thought I was done. Daniel's voice came from behind her, steady and certain. Your story is just beginning. Emma closed her eyes, tears slipping down once more. The weight of his words wrapped around her, frightening yet strangely comforting. She turned again, slowly, and faced him, in his eyes. She saw no judgment, no shame, only love. Fierce and unyielding. The kind she had longed for without admitting it. Her lips parted, but she couldn't speak. There was too much, too many emotions she couldn't put into words. Instead, she simply stood there, letting the silence speak for her. Letting the truth settle between them. Daniel took one last step closer. Not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the steady rhythm of his breath. His voice was low, almost a vow. I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here for as long as it takes for you to believe you're worth it. Emma's heart broke open at that. She covered her mouth with her hand, holding back a sob. Overwhelmed by the force of what she was feeling, for years she had been drifting through life, surviving but not living. And in one night, with a handful of words, her son had pulled her back into herself. He had forced her to see what she was too afraid to see, that she was still here, still alive, still capable of love. The night stretched on, the house silent except for their breathing. Emma didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how the world would look at her if they knew. All she knew was that tonight, something had shifted so deeply it could never be undone. She whispered one last time, her voice soft but filled with new truth. You've changed everything, Daniel. And in that moment, she knew life would never be the same again.